3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's Monday. It's Monday. It really is. 7 o'clock. And that can mean only one thing. It's time for Reading the Signs, where me, Comedy John Ryan, and my comedian pals from all over the world are going to be talking about comedy, well-being, why we do it, how we cope. And that's where we need your help. We need you to send us your top tips for well-being. Be part of the show. Drop a comment in the box on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on the mensradiostation.com website. It's going to be a great show, much better than last week. What we're trying to do is think exceptional, which, funnily enough, is the motto of WJ, our show sponsors. WJ are the UK's leading road marking and highway maintenance company. They're working with us, we're working with you. Let's get to it.
Ooh, exciting times. Good evening, everybody. Welcome along. It's Monday night, 7 o'clock. It's me, John Ryan, looking as rough as I've ever looked. It's been a tough week, I ain't gonna lie. But that's by the by. How's your week been? Do let me know that you're there. Let me know what you've been up to. As always, we are here to be listened to on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on mensradiostation.com website, on YouTube, on the sound. Look, you've got no excuse not to listen. All right. If you are listening to us in one of the depots for WJ, our sponsors, then guys, come on, let's get to it. Let's get the vans on the road. How's your week been? Do let me know. I've had an amazing week this week. So I'm going to put my glass on, so it's over good. I've had an amazing week this week. Last week, I was in Derby, I was in Vienna. It was an interesting week all around, to be honest. Derby was fantastic. I was there for a construction company. We talked about the golden rules of safety. And it made me think about the golden rules of safety for life. When you work on a construction site, every morning starts with a briefing. And I guess we should do that in life as well. When you take your kids to school, do you tell them, look, these are the things to look out for. Don't go with strangers. Don't cross the road. Don't get run over. Don't take cake off of anyone else. And it's all about looking out for yourself. So that was quite an interesting day. And the lovely thing about it was Ellie Jarman's bloke, Nelly, Steve, he came all the way across the Derby just to have coffee with me. Meant a lot to me, especially as last week we had that awful news about our good friend Phil Butler passing away. So that was really nice. And then Wednesday, off I went on a plane to Bratislava, except they wouldn't let me on the plane because this thing here, this thing that we rely on with all our lives, that we kind of base everything on, NHS app wasn't working, so they wouldn't let me on the plane. So I had to hang around, take a flight to Bratislava, which again made me think about stress and travel and how do we cope with things when they don't go our way. Because there were some pretty irate people who couldn't get on the plane on Wednesday. But I ended up in Vienna, and it was nice. It was I had a whole day there on Thursday before doing the show Thursday night and flying back at 3 o'clock on Friday morning. But the funniest thing about it was getting into a German Uber. An Uber, which I believe in German is like wait, I get Uber. But yeah, the Uber driver was started with his speaking German as you would. And my schoolboy German, or ich spreche nicht Deutsch, I don't speak German. Then he went, oh, okay, ich not speak English. So I'm like, okay, don't speak English, I don't speak German. I'm like, okay. And in any language it works. I'm saying, spreche Chinois, Chinese, no, and we got through in this kind of pidgin English, pidgin German, pidgin French conversation all the way to the airport, which involved a lot of das Fußball, which made me again realise that as men, although we are from different parts of the world, we do have things in common. We do have common ground that we can break down if we just make that a little bit of effort. Friday left me exhausted. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting too old for this. So when I went to do my gig Friday night, I thought, how am I going to get through it? But you know, it's wonderful being in a room above a pub full of punters, audience members, or business units if you run a club. And just been around people and that life and that whole joie de vivre. Look at me getting more French now because I've been to Europe. But that whole enthusiasm and vigour and passion that people have for life. It's just great to be there Friday night, Saturday night as well. And then off to the cinema yesterday to watch a film which I thought was going to be a romantic drama set in the Middle Ages, which was actually not at all. It was about a woman who was sexually attacked, and two blokes had a fight over her to prove whether she was lying or not. Very bizarre end to the week. So today I've been pretty tired doing the admin. Unfortunately, my guest that I had lined up for tonight wasn't able to come aboard, but this is where the gods and fate pulled in. I've been trying to get this guy, Geoff Schumann, to come and do this with me since June. And there's a simple reason for that. Anyone who knows me will know about my love of soul music and reggae music and soca music. And back in the day, Choice FM was our station to go to. And this was the DJ. This was the man who used to come to work with me every morning in my car. He was also on the Real McCoy. But more than that, like a lot of performers, there's a lot more strings to his bow. And unlike a lot of performers, he's a very generous, kind man, kind of spirit, who does so much for the community, not just what we would call maybe his community out, but the community. Anyone who comes into contact with him will benefit from being in his company. Geoff is someone I'm a fan of, and I then went from being a fan to being a friend. So it is with great pleasure that I'm going to spend the next hour in his company. Just as a reminder to people out there, especially if any of Geoff's friends are tuning in, the love of my life, Natasha, sits in the booth and answers any comments, right? But she answers as me. So if she tells you how she loves you, and that's her, that's not me. You get to know me. I may be, my idea of affection is go, yeah, you're all right. So Natasha will be dealing with any comments on that. We are not able to see comments unless people give SoundCloud their explicit consent. I don't know. This is how it works in 2021. You can pour your heart out all over Twitter and Facebook, but you can't leave a comment on SoundCloud without filling in the form. You've just got to click on the link and then you can comment away. So that said, all I want you to do is, if you are there, do let us know, say hello, and someone will answer you. And other than that, just please give a very special welcome to the awesome talent that is Mr. Geoff Schumann. There you go, mate. How's that?
How you doing, John? Just to say, I'm not trying to copy you, John, by wearing. I've just started to wear reading glasses. I had an eye operation recently, and I can't get used to it because I think I look like a fat version of the bloke Howard who used to do the Halifax. I kind of get paranoid, so I probably take them off to try. I look now more like Denzel Washington. So if the cashier asks for a date, she can have one.
Mate. Well, I'm only wearing glasses because I've got so much weight during lockdown that my face is puffed up like a bit. I've got like eyes that may in other times have been described in other ways.
Just say, John, you were stung by a bee, and it just I
was stung by a bee in a cake,
puffed out the face, and all that. We're all there. Thanks very much for the intro, John. Been a huge fan of yours for a very long time and why we're friends is because the very first time I encountered you, more than just a comic. I don't call you a comic, I call you a philosopher.
Okay, thank you.
Along the Archimedes principles, you very much Machiavellian. You I very rarely see you critical. I know you can get upset. I do know that much, but you're very controlled with it. And I remember I spent some quality time with you in Edinburgh many years ago, over 20 years ago. And it's just your philosophy on that. You see the value in humour in trying to engage and interact with people. What I love most importantly is that you spent the whole time convincing me, talking to me about mental health. I think we barely talked about comedy on that particular night. We just talked about my passion as a former teacher, your passion about what you wanted to do going into schools, because I know you at the time you were like, you know, you were more picking my brains about me having been a teacher and then moving on to the circuit, Hale and Pace, French and Saunders. You know, there were other people who are far more famous than me, who were ex-teachers who were in the game, and I just loved you from there. And I think that I follow this show regularly, and I'm really pleased that I've been invited on tonight by default.
You think? How did you meddle him? That's what I want to know. How did you get rid of him?
I love it. I'm glad I've eventually got on, and we'll talk and we'll ramble. I got into comedy, John, because I loved it. I saw Richard Pryor stuff. My influence was America, John, not over here.
Why America?
Because all we had over here, Johnny, was Lenny Henry. And by the time I got to uni, I mean, growing up as a kid, Lenny was the one because he was the only one, John. And so as a black kid, surrounded by white kids in a Catholic school who couldn't check if my story was true or not, Lenny was my first cousin. I'd never met him, wasn't related to him, but the usual set of lies. A bit like bit like Tony Cascarino not being Irish and playing for So I lied through my teeth, John. And then I got to about 1920, John, and people kept on saying that I was quite comical after you're studying. And then I didn't really enjoy Lenny Henry's comedy. I remember he was in a program called Three of a Kind, and I could tolerate that. But the stand-up wasn't authentic for me. The things he was talking about. And then he used to do this African character called Joshua Yarlog, Katanga. And I just thought to myself, I don't know anybody African like that. I know you can do wild exaggerations of characters. I just couldn't. I couldn't. And so by the time I was 21, 22, John, found my own voice. Went to the Gong Show, the comedy store one night, got on and won. And just liked comedy, John. I loved the improv that used to go on the Monday night.
What year was that? Do you remember?
John, 1993, John, was my original inception into comedy.
Wow.
Yeah, 93, John. Remember it well. And then John, my first solo show, John, I'd done the uni circuit from 92 onwards, but the comedy show was the show at the store because Channel 4 had all the big boys, John, and there was always rumours, John, if you went down to the comedy store, that's where all the producers were. Edinburgh. And I wasn't, John, I didn't have any money for Edinburgh. And those I knew were in eggs. So I wasn't going to go up there, John, and anything like that. And then I did a solo show in my local town hall, 1,000 seats. I put Leo Chester. Leo Chester from the Real McCoy. In fact, no, the first one I put on Curtis Walker and Colette Johnson, who'd both been in the Real McCoy, and then were suddenly out of it by 93. I had them as guests, and we sold the place out. And that's one of my own journey. I formed my own little stable, discovered Richard Blackwood, Toju, XL, and I started my own little company because, as you know, John, comedy is a bit tribal. Unless you're mates with somebody, John, sometimes you don't get the gigs.
That's it. You don't. That's right.
So I started my own little company, John. Started booking myself in community centres. I was the host. Richard was always on first. Toju was in a different class. Was doing Blind Date, Cilla Black, Kenneth Williams, as a black guy dressed as a rapper, doing Barbara Windsor and sounding like doing Kenneth Williams. He was just blowing people's heads off and their minds off. And I very much, John, wanted to do the black circuit. That's where my heart is, John, where my heart was. I wasn't interested, John, as some were in wanting to go on to what was known as or deemed as the mainstream circuit. I had no interest, John. I had an audience. I could be culturally whatever I wanted to be. So when I saw people like yourself, John, Tommy Tiernan back in the day, I remember when Ardwell O'Hanlon first came over, these were unapologetic Irish comics who talked about their heritage and their background. And I thought to myself, John, God, wouldn't it be great to be able to stand up in front of a group of white people and talk about being black and not mentioning I nick stuff. I'm a burglar. I think. And I went and saw a couple of black comics at the time we were doing the white circuit. Some were nicking material, John, as you know, and were well known for it. And I just thought, nah, it's not for me. And I never ever from that point onwards, John, tried to get on the jongleurs bandwagon, tried to get onto the car. I just wasn't interested, John. I just created my own vibe and my own circuit.
Was there enough work there to sustain you at that time?
Well, I was still teaching, John. I then did a master's and became an education officer and got myself in youth and community work. So I was doing that really full time, John, until 97.
Where were you doing that?
Well, I was just putting on shows in community centres, and it was like having a Saturday job, a weekend job, and it was fine. I had an income, John, so I wasn't full time like yourself. So when I met you in Edinburgh, I was already a broadcaster. And I was up there doing a thing for the BBC, but I didn't take that plunge, John. I couldn't afford to. In '93, my first child was born, my first son, and so therefore I was in no position, John, to give that up because you don't know. And I had my big break.
Where were you? Where were you raised?
I was raised in West London, John, in a place called Acton. Great time. And the funny thing was, John, I up until the age of 16, my best mate was a white guy called Kevin Thompson. White guy. He was a twin. And his mother had married a black guy. He was white, obviously, and he had an older white brother. But we kind of clicked. We hung around. We were both good at football, different sport. And then by the time we got to 16, John, then you start to realise there are cultural differences. The whole pub thing went out a few times, John. Black so and so, the monkey, all that kind of. And I wasn't about that, John. He stayed in that world, and then I moved, and then I became very politicised, and started to think about my environment and my surroundings, and that's why I did. Even to this day, John, people look at me and I put it on Facebook. I don't find Irish jokes funny, John. Englishmen, Irish, I just don't find them funny. I'm not saying, John, that you shouldn't and others shouldn't.
No, that's right. You understand the power of language, don't you?
Yeah, I just can't, John. I really don't. And in the black culture, it's like there's an Englishman. No, there's a Trini, a Bayesian, and a Jamaican. And by and large, the Jamaican's the one who's not intelligible. So I just you start to get an assessment. That's why when I first met you all those years ago, it was like, is he for real? I mean, we're not talking comedy here. He's not trying to tell me how much he loves Marley. He's talking.
What was funny?
Beans.
When we were, because I always remember that interview, and I remember afterwards my manager saying, you didn't really talk much about your show. And I'm like, well, why? We were talking about other stuff. We were talking about life and reality. And surely, as grown men, we've got a kind of responsibility to just talk about stuff now, and not necessarily just, because there's nothing worse than being around comics who just want to crack jokes all the time. I went away with Frank Carson once, and I wanted to kill him.
It's where I
want to stop cracking jokes. Yeah, just wouldn't just stop from morning till, you're going to pair of asses. Oh.
Yeah, Robin Williams always on stage. But I got a sense about you that, although I didn't know you the very first time I met you, but in terms of background, and I knew that there was something about you that was unique, because quite often when white people meet somebody black, the way to kind of, it's like the great Lenny Bruce would say, how white people like to try and relax black people. They'd say like, oh, did you see the Joe Louis fight? So now in our context, it could have been like, I like Frank Bruno. You didn't do any of that with me. You didn't tell me that you grew up in a very cosmopolitan, mixed environment of both black and white kids. You didn't do any of that. You just talked. And then the references around, I remember I think we talked about roti, and then you said blood clot. Forgive my French. You said it in such a way I was like, well, how do you know about language like that? And then you still didn't. And even to this day, you still don't go on about, well, I know black people and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's refreshing for me and my politics and people I know. You don't play that whole, well, because he's black, I better talk urban. You're always John Ryan. And I love that. I follow your page, I follow you. You're always John. And that's what I personally love about you. You don't patronize me. You don't tell me, oh, Geoff, look, racism's a terrible thing. And I remember us, you and me having a ding dong a year ago of a real battle on a race issue. And I went, John, come on now. And you went, Geoff, no, come on now. I was like, John, come on now. And it didn't dilute my respect for you. You were actually saying from the heart, Geoff, no, that's not right. Because that's almost chastising the whole white race. That you can't say that, Geoff. Because if someone grabs someone's handbag, I'm not saying that's the whole black race. You can't say that, Geoff. And that's what I like about you, John. You're no hiding.
Man, that was hilarious times. Just what I do really badly is I make notes. So if we have a conversation today and you tell me you're going to do X, Y, and Z by this time next year, by this time next year, it'll pop up on my diary going, message Geoff and see if you did it. So when around the time when they was talking about, like when they started taking the knee, when all the kind of statues, and I saw the pain that my friends were going through, right? And I couldn't feel that pain. I could only witness it in a distance. So if you remember, one of the suggestions I made was, because everyone's going, look, what we've got to do is we've all got to unite and we've got to take on authorities together. But my belief is that it's not going to happen, right? What you need to do is to have a march, only white people go on it, right? And then all black people can sit at home and watch us. And then we'll all see each other and go, right, these are my people. We're not going to get beat up by the police because there's going to be no black people there. And we're not going to even get on we'll get on the news, so it always. And the point being that when black people see how much support they have, and liberal-minded white people see just how few there are of us, right? And man, that opened up a whole social
can of worms. If you remember, John, I asked you, could I nick? I said, John, please, can I have permission? Your permission to copy and paste that, because that is exactly what in terms of class divide. Because no disrespect, John, the way in which we were educated in the system here, if I was white working class, John, I mean, I would hate black people. Be honest, John, because of the education I would have been given, John. I would look at Sky Sports. I would look everywhere. I'd see Black History Month being rammed down my throat. As far as I'm concerned, although we're less than 5% of the population, I would believe we're being taken over by an alien culture. Because that's what the media feed off of. And when you come up with that suggestion, John, I was like, that is more powerful. Because white people, like they say, children become what children can see. I remember watching a program, and John, you have to remind me, he played Cracker, Robbie Coltrane, a great Scottish comic. And he said in an interview that live on television, it was in the 80s on Channel 4, and he said that a friend of his said his mother had got attacked in a street robbery, and said to Robbie Coltrane, "Don't tell me about those effing blacks." And Robbie Coltrane said, "Well, hold up a minute. It's just like you, John. You can't say that and stigmatize a whole community. You can't do that." And I just think, John, some of these people with their innate prejudices, John, you know, Trump could never have happened, John, if there wasn't a belief in white superiority.
That's right. See,
you've got to educate people, John.
Yeah, there's no point. So one of my favourite bits of abuse I got was from another, obviously it's got to be another person, who was on a black person's page. And comment on it. Have you seen this guy's Facebook profile? Look at him. And then found a picture of him with short hair and said he's probably down at Witherspoon's with his beer and mates. So me being me, I commented going, well, that's the funniest thing. I'm going to send it to my friends, right?
Yeah.
And I notice I'm willing to talk to you if you're having a conversation. And sure, no, I don't talk to idiots, right? So I then replied with, well, okay, you know what? I'm open to have my views challenged, and if I'm going to listen to you because you've clearly done well. You make your public profile. I see that you work as a cashier at Tesco's in wherever it was, basically, and you've been a model. I wish you the very best of your life, and I mean, who do you think you are? Digging me out just because I'm working in super. Hang on, you just commented my appearance and made a load of presumptions, right? Anyway, so I put in my diary that 12 months later to get back on that page and stand by my remarks. So I went back on that page, stood by my remarks, said to him, "Look, I'm still there. Nothing changed. You lot told me you're going to pull down statues, take the lead, and everything would be different. I said it would shake up the establishment a bit. Maybe we'll get a few more black people or match of the day, and they won't put you up for a while, right?" And I put that on now in July. I'm 12 months on. Like one person trying to message me going, "Well, I was a bit angry." And that's how it is. Just let the facts speak for themselves.
Yeah, I think what it is, John, it's like a lot of things, John, when you challenge. You see, when you have a lack of knowledge, and I use it, and I use that, John, in the sense of when I say lack of knowledge, I didn't say lack of intelligence. I say lack of knowledge because of what you've been taught, what you've been I'm a sociologist, what you've been socialized with, what you've been taught with. So, John, always when we were growing up, John, it was an Englishman, Irishman, and a Scotsman. The Scottish were always tight. You never heard the one about the Englishman. It's always about Paddy this and Paddy that. Then you get to further your education, John. Then you get to meet people like yourself, not just yourself, but you get to meet other people. Then, John, I went to Ireland, got to understand the history of the 6 counties, and then start to realise, wow, Ireland's really been a colony of England's for years. It's what it is. I was never taught that in school, John, and for good reason, John, because then you wouldn't be in a position to challenge that type of stereotypical language. So, like I say, John, when I meet some white comics, they'll say things like, "Love Richard Pryor." "Oh, Lenny Henry is my favourite." But whether he is or not, you don't need to tell me that to relax me.
That's never mentioned Charlie Williams, eh?
Yeah, well, that the days gone by gone. But now, John, it'll be like, I tell you what, that Jack chicken is so hot. I love it.
Jollof rice.
Yeah, because that's what people. But then, John, I remember being the only black face in the room, John. And it was from my heart, John. I felt I had to say the right things, even though they were real for me. Because I went to a Catholic grammar school, John. I love Dave Allen, but I think it was important, John, to let people in the room know I liked white humour. I wasn't a huge fan of Monty Python, but Life of Brian. But Life of Brian, John, I've seen about 40 times. I just think some of the writing in that, John. You don't need to follow me. You don't need to follow anybody. You're all individuals. Yes.
Then do you think, because you've used your comedy then to go into broadcasting and to go into other areas, do you think that the comedic side of it has made it easier for you to get listened to and to get on?
I think, John, I would like to be brave, John. Maybe follow you one day in the future, in front of, and maybe be in rural Surbiton, so not suburbia, but Surbiton, you know, in a rural white middle class audience, and just be me. And I know for a fact you've got to be like a really brave comic to know you're going to die on your ass, because people aren't going to be able to necessarily resonate with the things that you want to say. I just haven't got that kind of fame or popularity to want to take that risk and kill my career in front of a group of white people who I would look at, John, as a jury. You know, when I go out, John, I see 500 white people, John, I'm like, not guilty, Your Honour. So that's the phobia, John. That's my mental health.
Wear a suit, right? Wear a suit. You get a letter from someone from TV.
That's my mental health. That's my thing, John. I remember, John, I hosted a Hackney Empire special, and on my digitally was on in the early and was on very early. Yeah. Harry Hill closed it and was superb. Joe Brand did very well, and I remember having a conversation backstage, and Jenny Eclair had that previous year had won Edinburgh. She won the Fringe, the comedy, and she openly said, didn't hide her words, John. She said, if that audience out there was all black, I'd be shitting myself. You know, and that's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know that I understand that. You know, I work a lot with audiences, and when I've done what's called urban circuit, you just address the elephant in the room. You just kind of, the elephant in the room is the fact that we're all in the room and we're all the same. And then I think what happens a lot with recent politics, especially the way we look to America, is it's become very divisive. And as a sociologist, I'm sure you know that it's class. Look how well you've done. I think, well, has it not?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, John, it's about understanding the people you can talk in front of, John. And if they've had black comics on the circuit that have gone before me, and all they ever do, John, is talk sexually about having large genitalia as black people and whatever. And then Lenny Henry, there was nothing really, not the kind of politics I would follow. When Lenny got with Dawn, he had to change his material, and Lenny had to grow up on television. And has done some tremendous things. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I say I'm a fan, but some of the things that he did, you know, Algernon wants to say okay. Oh, I'm driving. White guys driving past in the car, John, and shouting out through the window screen, okay, because that's what people, you know, in America, where I discovered my priorism and Dick Gregory, or I met my hero. There was Cosby didn't do politics, he didn't touch it, but there was somebody, as in the great Richard Pryor, who learned from Dick Gregory, who was saying things, John, that I was 17 doing A-level politics, got to 18 and realized, John, this is what I want to do. Yeah, this is I want to be able to stand up there. That's why I love a guy called Nabil.
Nabil should be massive. He could be a massive star.
I love Dane Baptiste, because they're a black man I've seen in front of an all-white audience, and I've come out of there with my head held high and said, no way did they reinforce and say things that, you know, firstly, it's their own material, John. And secondly, and we know how precious material is. There's a story that I want to share with you about John, because John, I put something, I copied and pasted something on Facebook about a joke about going on a night out with somebody, I think related to Brexit. And John wanted to know, where did I get it from? Well, I was thinking, well, why do you want to know that for, John? It's not yours, is it? I just copied and pasted it. And John went, the funny thing is, Geoff, this is me and John talking privately away from social media. John said, Geoff, I do a joke. And I hadn't seen John's routine. So John said, I do a joke, Geoff, which is really sort of similar about Brexit and a bad date. I went, John, it was sent to me. And so John said, for proof, could you send it to me, please? And I thought, I'll do that, John. But John, honestly, so I sent it to John. Then John explained the gist of where it came from.
And maybe even made it not as funny.
But what made you laugh was when I said to you, I think it was a certain black comedian that said it. And then you were like, oh, right. Oh, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay. But it's like every white and black comic especially white comics on the mainstream circuit, they all know that there are people who lift material and are very well known for it. Very, very well known.
Let me just stop you there for a second, just to say hello to people joining us. Thanks for coming along to listen to the Signs with John Ryan and this week's very special guest, Geoff Schumann. I want to just give a quick shout out to our sponsors, the WJ Group, who are Britain's leading roadwork expert. I always kind of watch and listen to stuff, and I hear them going, and now we're from our sponsors. But we don't have to know.
Yeah, real sponsors.
These guys are very supportive of me and very supportive of the whole thing. There are a few people I want to say hello to. Louise, Addy, wants to know if I'm wearing Tasha's glasses. I'm coordinating my t-shirt, Luke. Sean Durkee, wonderful. This is my bodyguard. This guy is amazing. Awesome man. Hope you're over your COVID there, mate. Of course, Dawn Knowlton, amongst others. Do let us know that you're there and leave your comments in the box.
John, can't you get sponsorship from Ryanair? As in the surname and the airline?
That man wouldn't give you a penny.
Wait, careful what you say. I might get a corporate from them one day. So if anyone from that airline is listening, John Ryan's on his own on that one. I want to make some money. My days of socialism are over.
When I first met you, when I found that anyway wrong, I remember being told to listen to the band. I'm thinking, and then I got, because I was doing the kids show as well, I got Nickelodeon to sponsor me. Then I thought, I want to get a newspaper column out of this. So I called up my local paper to them and said, would you like to pay me to do a column? They said no. I said, okay, well, let's like 20 quid a week. It's not what's it going to cost you. I went, all right, we'll give you 20 quid a week. So they gave me £100. Then I contacted the Evening Standard, said, look, I'm a columnist, so I'm also a Guardian. And I thought, hang on, I've got to think bigger than this. So I contacted LBC, became their reporter, and BBC 5 Live, I became their reporter as well. And with all these little bits and pieces that are knit together, I got off the short microphones, and so Trantech microphones are going to sponsor me. We'll let them do that. FM58. And all I've done was I've used that background and the skills that I've learned being from hacking. And my dad was a charter, so it's about chance and stuff. And then I took the fact that I'm much more comfortable around people from different backgrounds than I am around a room full of English people. I like to be in a mixed company. In any social event, I would naturally gravitate towards people of colour and people who've got Irish backgrounds. It's like a magnet to me. But yeah, so many people I sincerely respect are very proud when they're English conservatives, and that some of my closest friends fit into that bracket. And what I think is that we find like-minded people in different places. And so it always struck me as odd when I would do a gig, do comedy, and people just target, well, I'm a 40-year-old white worker about these things. And then I remember once seeing, I think it was Ricky Flanagan talking about identity. That's how it should be. We should be able to talk about anything, anyone, at any time, but we don't do that. The
reason why we can't, we don't, like I say, John, there are some white comics when they see an all black crowd. You know, John, we were speaking off air, and one of the white comics I just think is brilliant, and I don't need to name him for anyone to go back and stir it. But you know, his first opening gambit was he started talking about reefer and marijuana and drugs, because that's what he felt in his mind. This is what the audience wanted, and he's a very funny comic in his own right. Didn't need to do that, but he still got laughs. But he would have got, in my opinion, even greater laughs if he just did his routine. John Lenihan is a comic magician. He just does his routine, and I know it's about having the relevant material, John. That's why if you can do a diverse crowd, John, because of it's thought out comedy. It's I've seen some comics, John, and I think to myself, I'm in the same bracket as them, but in reverse, John. I know that some of the things I want to talk about, John, in my childhood, some of the references white audiences would certainly get, but some of the stuff when I want to talk about my views on society might offend some white people. So when I've been to white comedy clubs, John, seeing some of the, I'm not being funny, but I tell you that, John, he's Russell. One's really funny. One does the Newsweek one. Russell Brand's good, and the other one, Russell Howard is funny as well. Russell Kane, I'd rather watch paint dry. I just cannot. That's my point. And I'd love to see him come from a black crowd and come with that material there. I think I would watch a stone. It's like, but that's no disrespect to him or Jenny Eclair. When Jenny said she'd be petrified of an all black audience, it's about your material and what you talk about. I went to see Patrick Kilty when he was hosting the Channel 5 program, Channel 4 program, and what's her name? She's done very well. She was hosting, black woman. She was hosting a health program on Channel 4. She was in Line of Duty. as well.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah, and I went to see her. She got me some tickets. I went with about 3 or 4 other black people, but we left after about 35. We didn't even get to see her routine because Patrick Kilty just was like, "What is this?" But I've seen Patrick Kilty in a comedy store, and he was brilliant. But it was just like I'm older, I'm mature. The level of the humour and constant swearing. Not that there's anything wrong with swearing. I just couldn't. Like I say, when I see Russell Kane, I just sit there and just think, wow.
Was this before lockdown or after lockdown?
Well, Russell's currently on that lunchtime show on Channel 4, Stephanie McGovern's show, whatever.
I don't really watch television.
I wish you would. I wish you would, John. But I just, but you know, John, you've got to be of a certain sensibility to get to that level. I love Russell Howard. His topicality. That's for me. Jimmy Carr's a bit dry. I love Worship Mark Thomas because it's a level of political comedy.
But those days are gone now, aren't they? Those days of comedians being able to go and just talk about real issues. We really like to say there's freedom of speech. There's also freedom to not get paid. And I think that people have to bear in mind sometimes that everything's going to come back and bite you. Everything's going to come back and haunt you.
Well, society changes, John, and we're older. Sometimes I'm deemed by one audience to be very relevant. Another audience, you know, I did a gig, John, did really well, and a young woman came up to me, and I thought, oh, you know, whoa, wow. And she said to me, I used to listen to you in the car with my mum on the way to school. With my mum on the way to school. I'm thinking, John, I'm not that old, am I? Flipping out. So sometimes, John, you know, I guess society changes. I guess, you know, when rock and roll by Elvis was the devil's music and the establishment were concerned, I just wish, John, we're in an age now, John, where there are some really good, in my opinion, John, really good comics on the mainstream. I mean, I loved what's his name, Frankie Boyle. I did when he was on the quiz program. Daryl O'Brien hosts it. Not the week. Yeah, I just thought Frankie. You can always see he was going to be a superstar. And there are one or two others I just really enjoy. And then there are some I look at, John, and I think to myself, you know, I don't know if I could handle even 10 minutes of that type of humour. What do I know, John? What do I know?
Subjective thing. I was going to tell you my favourite story about someone coming up to see a comedian after the gig was a gorgeous girl, went up to the comics. Hi, and she was a bit nervous, and he was like, "Oh, hello," and she said, "I think you might be my dad."
No.
And this girl's like 20 years of age. And sorry, took out this of her mum. And it was her dad.
Was she ugly? Was she ugly, John? Because if she said you were her dad, John, don't tell me she was ginger. She wore glasses. She put on weight during lockdown. What was her name? Cranky.
No, the girl came up to the guy and said, "Yeah, I think you might be my dad." It was just one of the funniest carpet rug pulls of all time. Where do you think your future is going to be then? Do you want to get back to non-comedy and promoting stuff, or what is it you're looking to do?
I think, John, I like writing, John. I'm on my 5th play. Lockdown wasn't great in terms of theatre. But I like writing, John. I like writing for others. I've just done some stuff with Dame Baptiste for a YouTube series on the art of A to Z of blackness. I'm in constant contact with Paul Whitehouse, who's currently in the West End, breaking all records with Only Fools and Horses, the musical. I like writing. I like satire, John. I like.
Do you remember when you was going to put me in the panel?
Well, you came and read for it. Yeah, John, because I remember for the backstory here, having met John in Edinburgh, and we got on so well. When I got to London, I'd written this pantomime called Josie and the Multicolour Weave-On, where all the other characters stayed in character, biblical times, but there was a white guy ahead of his time, because John could do that, because John and I had conversed. John could do the language, the accents and whatever. Then it was very clear and apparent to me that John had grown up in a very diverse environment. And unfortunately, John had put in for some funding to do tours in schools. And lo and behold, But in the middle of the second read, John had got this thing, and it was like, Geoff, look, I could try and do it for you, but and I understood that, John, and it was right that you went and did what you were doing because it was something you had a passion for. But I did the panto, it done very well. We sold out. You've gone on to bigger and better things. I haven't made it to Hollywood yet. I was very jealous when you were talking about Austria and recent gigs that you've been to, and I've been in my house and observing my four walls. But I'm not bitter, John.
No, I know.
I'm happy for you. I just, if you get chicken pox or the virus, and you remember me, I'll do the gig, John, at a fraction of your rate. But I'm not bitter, John.
If it's any consolation, this week I'm going to Winchester, Loughborough, and Manchester. So.
Yeah. When you go into schools, John, just to educate me, I know I'm a guest on your show, but especially because mental health is such a big thing. Well, I know you do also talk about other male issues, testicular cancer and other things. But John, I mean, when you go into school, and one of the things I loved when I was a teacher was when you were imparting knowledge, and you're doing it in a humorous way.
Yeah.
What do you get a sense of, John? That I've educated these people, I've been given permission to go in there and educate these people.
John, this is really sad. This is really sad, right? One of the schools I'm going to, we do the 11 and 12-year-olds, the 13, 14, 15, 16, and then 6 weeks, right? Yeah. And you get these beautiful 11-year-old children who then, next group, they're these cynical 13-year-olds. Something happens in them 2 years where they become cynical. By the time they're like 15, 16, they are worn down. And one of the main things that I come away from there thinking is they're just not used to any positivity from an adult. And we're not talking about inner city ghetto school kids. We're talking Surrey, Sussex, and some of the places they're going to, their solicitors are in the tens of thousands.
Can I ask, John, what language, John, how do they speak, John? Can I ask, especially, I'm not in the suburbs, John, so I don't know about schools in Surrey.
They on their own, they're very well spoken, but collectively they adopt this kind of.
Is it that urban twang?
Urban, like Roadman, he says, well, my man. And they says, what are you doing?
Well, I tell you why I get angry, John, and I'm really pleased that we're on this point, John. Like I say, when I was watching the comedy circuit from Ardal O'Hanlon to Tommy Tiernan to Sean, no, not Sean Locke's not Irish. Sean, what's his name? I think he was Sean. Sean Hughes, right. John, I had a range of Irish comics to watch, John, and I used to just cry, John, with laughter. They weren't defecating. They weren't being disgraceful about Irish culture. They talked about nationalism in a way in which, and somebody like yourself, John, when people want to talk about their background and stuff, I was just like, this is just fantastic. And then, John, so people get that balance. Why I take great offense with television and stuff, and because of the imagery and stuff, John, is that I look at what's propagated and what's promoted as being authentically black. And it has to be this, we're vulgar, John, we're slack, we talk about our testicles. I've got no issue with Mo Gilligan. The Big Nasty Show, for me, is a termination, should have been happening. But, and they give him a BAFTA for that. And then wait, John, white kids, John, will see that because it's across the country and believe that's how we all behave. That's what I look at.
Worse than that, they'll believe that's how we are meant to behave.
Yeah, it's just awful imagery. And then, John, my anger is that it's by and large white people behind it with black gatekeepers who push that imagery. My mate's a deputy head still, John, and I go to his school. And I remember a couple of years ago, John, they confiscated a 14-year-old's phone, John. And on that phone, John, they found her engaged in oral sex with 2 boys. 14, John, as an initiation, John. The whole language, John, of Turkish, Indian and black kids in this school. Yeah, bruv, swear down, fam. And I just, John, I despair, John. So I'm up, John, and I get hurt, John, when people say, "Oh, what do you expect? You've reached 50. You're an old man." It's not for you.
It's not that at all.
If that's the case, then, John, then we would always be in the church owned slaves. There were people who thought that slavery was acceptable. When you want to challenge it, John, you're jealous. Give me a microphone and give Big Man Nasty a microphone. I promise you, John, I'm lyrical, I'm poetic. I'd have no problem in a grime battle. Now give him a microphone and be funny.
But nobody, but one of the senators, no one's going to hear that. And the problem with these kids is, so the private schools are going to, their teachers like that from, right? They suffer from poverty of love. All right, that's it. So they have the iPhones that I pay for. They go Seychelles for their holiday.
Yeah.
When I see what I would call the kids I grew up with, they suffer from poverty of aspiration. Right? They're never told what they can be. They're only told what they can't be.
Yeah,
absolutely. But then my kids, I try to instill in all of them, be who you want, be what you want, but you are ultimately going to be a reflection of the people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So my only ambition for my kids, not rocket science, I want them to get to 21, finish full-time education, no drink problem, no drug problem, no baby, no criminal. Do that, and it's so much easier. Life is just so much easier.
My old man's ambition, I was fortunate because the older sister in the family is Oxford, so I had that role model. You know, John, my mum was illiterate in this society, John. My dad passed away 2 years ago. My dad was an educated man, John. He was an economist. Went to uni. And, you know, for a black man in the 50s, John, you know, he was a Pan-Africanist. He believed, you know, so people like Joshua Nyerere, Nkrumah, future leaders of independent African states, my father had met them at a Pan-Africanist conference. So I you know, John, I grew up on speech radio, John. So I still listen to radio. Yeah. I still listen to Talk Sport, John. I grew up on speech radio. I didn't grow up on Capital and all those kind of things there, John. So but it's painful, John, because every time to write something, John, that's satirical, and to have someone who's late 20s, early 30s, Oxbridge by and large, BBC, whatever, to tell you, I don't quite get this.
Yeah.
And I find it so offensive, John, almost soul destroying, that I'm not prepared to submit, John, things to
but you see, where we differ, though, is that how I was brought up was, there's a wall. You're brought up with this wall, okay? Now, you can live there and see the wall, and that's going to stop you doing what you're doing. That's a barrier, right? Or you can press the wall, and some places on the wall give, and then you move forward, and you move along, and you move forward, right? And so when I first started doing comedy, I realised pretty quickly, I'm not going to get on 8 out of 10 cats, I'm not the week, love it, Apollo. That's not for me. I'm going to find my own path around it, right? Yeah. And so then what happened was, because I'll go, I'll do that. I get the opportunities I've had have been fantastic. And people on a weekly basis will go to me, how do you do that? Right? Yeah. Someone last week, a young black comic, said to me, I really want to do what you're doing in my community. How do I do that? And why are you able to do it? And I said, well, because I don't see it as your community. I see it as our community. If you want us to work together, we can do that. But while you're still calling it your community, my community, and we're allowing them to divide us, it's never going to change me.
I think, John, that's because, John, there are a whole certain level of social issues that are different, John. So whilst, John, we are less as African Caribbean people, John, and not about Asians or Greeks or other we're less than 3% of the population, John, but we're 34% of the prison population.
But you're also hang on, 90% of the Arsenal football team. You're also 80% of the top 10.
Hold up, John. Sports. John, things that we're supposed to excel in. Boxing, whatever. So, educationally, John, you know, I could vouch for you, John, take you anywhere. As Geoff, in a so-called hostile environment, the minute you walk in with me, he's got to be all right.
I know.
Because I know Geoff. Yeah. And then on top of that, John, what will come out of your mouth will reinforce that he's definitely all right. Look at what he comes out with. What I'm saying, John, is that I watched the BAFTAs this year, John, which is unusual for me, John. Like yourself, I don't necessarily watch TV. But I got about 10 texts saying that, can you believe it? So-and-so's won a BAFTA for that show. And again, I'm like, well, you know, look at the demographic for that. It's not aimed at us. But it's the reinforcement, John. When I went into a school one day, John, recently, and the guy went, again, these are 15-year-old kids, John, who were like, sir, white kids, sir, do you like the Big Nasty show? Now, why do you think he's asked me that, John? Come on, John. I'm black. It wants to engage in a conversation. I'm into your culture and blah, blah. And I'm just saying, John, it is kind of difficult, John, because that kind of black male representation, the use of the M-word.
Yeah, mate, exactly.
You see me on Facebook, John. I hate it, John.
Then how do you come back at that? Do you not go and say, go and read some Maya Angelou or some Chinua Achebe? Or
no, I don't do that, John. You see what I post on Facebook. Sometimes, John, you have to simplify it, John. When I'm a great friend of mine, whose surname is O'Neill, he loves Irish jokes, but John, he's a proud. I wouldn't say he's a nationalist, but he knows his Irish heritage. Yeah, but he's like, why do you get so upset, Geoff, about Irish jokes? When we as the Irish, we don't get upset. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. It's like,
no, but you can see it.
I see it. It offends me, John. It kills me.
Because
you're funny at all.
You're not living in, like Robespierre back during the times of the French Revolution talked about how in the future prisons wouldn't have walls, would be linked by invisible cables, right? In glass buildings, which is what mobile phones are, which is what social media is, right? So you've got all these issues on you, all these things coming about you. We've been locked down for 12 months, 18 months. You've hit this wall. How do you stay sane, mate? What do you do? What keeps you going?
Well, my sanity, John, is that there are people like you I interact with. I write, John, it's therapeutic writing, satirical stuff that that will never ever possibly see the light of day. I'm the chair of my mate Felix Dexter, my late friend Felix Dexter's charity. I've had mental health issues, John, without knowing I had mental health issues. I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and a very bad relationship with one of my siblings. It was all about money. And my mechanism, John, is that if you attack me, John, I'm skilled enough in my brain to be able to ignore it. But there's a part of my brain, John, which is the real challenge, which is like, you put your mouth on me, John, and it's a lie. I will go after you because I'm dealing with someone right now. I will go after you for the next month, 2, 3, 5, 6 until you apologize. So I know, John, that's a strain of something. But I don't mean, John, I don't look at all white people, John, and say, look, you're an effing racist. What I want to explain to white people is how you benefited from the institutions that have been set up. And as a consequence, John, my whole view, John, in terms of my relationship with white people, I don't have this view, John, about all white people are like Trump. I don't have that. Dion Dublin's being criticised, John, because he said on the Football Focus this week, John, his words were, he doesn't mind black history, but we should equally talk about white history. Who told him to say that, John? Black groups lost their mind. He's an Uncle Tom. I bet he's got a white wife. I bet he's like all of them. He's blah, blah, blah. How can he say that? And I just quickly put a comment in, John, saying, I love him. I love him as a pundit, John. I like him on Homes Under the Hammer. People love Michael Richards, John, the former Man City. I just see him as a Rusty Lee without breasts. He's there because he laughs so loud. But Alison Hammond on this morning, some white people love that loud, jovial Negro. They love it. The safe one. It's more than safe, John, because that's the imagery that's propelled. And if I turn up, John, and I don't fulfill that criteria, John, it's like, well, he's no good. Well, he's not funny. He hasn't. But you could do that Lenny Henry impression, because that was pretty spot on. But let me clarify, John, before someone says I've never. I am not saying I dislike Lenny. I'm just saying, I know you're not saying that at all. As I found my own voice, John, I just know that. Okay, John, I started writing with Felix Dexter. Yeah, and I love him. Got me in the Real McCoy, whatever. Felix Dexter was a comic, John, who did the white circuit. Yeah, did it all. I'll be real, but he used to struggle, John, on the black circuit. Because his material, John, a lot of swearing, because he was doing mainly, he was the Time Out Comedian of the Year in 82, I think it was, John. He was doing the white circuit, John, with a lot of swearing and profanity. Black crowds didn't dig Felix. I witnessed on 2 occasions Felix get booed. I warmed up for him in 94, John, and the reviews were about me in the black press, how much they enjoyed But then when he got his break, a guy called Terry Jervis approached him and said, look, I'm taking over as a producer of the Real McCoy. I'd like you to come and do some character stuff. Felix panicked. He knew he could act, but he didn't know about black characters. I got a phone call, John, went to visit me at his home. And the character I was doing at the time, John, was called Ghanaian and Greg. He was a West African student who was
I remember Indian.
He was the briefcase. Character. But once Felix did that, then I compared that to, I said, Felix, whatever you do, please. This, Katanga. I said, do you know what? Yeah. As much as we love him private, please, if you go on and do that, I can't sit. And then he kind of agreed. He was like, well, what do you suggest? Well, let's. He's a cab. He works in a cab office, like a lot of West African people did at the time. He worked in Tesco's. He was a traffic warden. So we John. So we started to do that. Then, John, because of my background, John, of white guys, nightclub geezer, John. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
can't stand racist. Don't like the police because they're white. I don't get a white girl. I don't get a white girl, son. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And we started to do characters, John, based on people we'd actually seen. Did
these characters allow you to get a voice or to use that part of your brain that needed to express itself?
It did, John. And funny thing, John, you've always been in my mind. Even when I look at your postings, talking to you and stuff, and little WhatsApps we have, I'm always I'm conscious about my mental health. I'm conscious about the fact that, John, I am bitter, John. I am angry. But there's a certain type of Negro, a certain type of black that's consistently propelled as being acceptable. So my mental health, John, has been like, Felix is dead now. I'm too old now to be given an opportunity and they'll never give me an opportunity, and I accept that. So I look at Nabil and I actively encourage, really actively. I look at Dane and I will say, look, I'm not waiting for your eulogy for me to write about how wonderful you are. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep banging the envelope. As John, you're saying, pushing the boundaries, John. Keep doing it, because, you know, otherwise we end up with shows that are constantly with the loud Negro laughing loud with no political opinion. And I just like, we're more than that, John.
Well, Geoff, mate, it's been brilliant talking to you, man. I've got
Thank you, John.
You know, a lot from it, and it's really good. I think the way you're coping is with your writing, your creativity. You are a real inspiration to not just young black comics, but I've always found you very supportive as well. Hopefully, we'll speak soon. In the meantime, you know what, mate? Just take care, stay safe. Just keep being you.
I shall try, John. Keep doing what you're doing, John. Thanks for allowing me to come on the platform and have a laugh with you.
Cheers. Oh, well, that was Geoff Schumann. Just a fascinating character, just amazing, just so much energy, so much passion. He's been around from from a long, long time ago. And what was very clear, what he was saying to me, was that feeling of, you know, there are injustices in the world, there are wrongs in the world. Writers, performers, we've got an opportunity to go along with it or to challenge it. And one of the things about well-being, and he was very open and honest about, he's had his own problems, is that when you do have trouble, you've got to find a way of somehow dealing with it or coming up with some sort of strategy that is going to help you. One of the best things I think that I heard from him there was the fact that through writing and being creative, is giving you an outlet to channel those frustrations. But it's also about supporting other people and being positive, helping other people in their endeavors. He was very positive about black comics and white comics having favorites from equal communities, and also passionate enough to say, no, I don't like that. And being able to stand your ground and say what you want to say, it comes from confidence. That confidence comes from being educated, I think. In my case, a lot of my confidence came from the fact that I've got a load of mates who'll come back here if you said so much you didn't like. It does give you that sort of the confidence or the bravado or whatever you want to call it. I want to leave you with, as always, with my own top tips for well-being that we've gathered over the weeks. I'm gonna start with Sol Bernstein, who talked about life not being easy and how it's a battle. And Milton, who said, sort out your physical health. If your physical health is good, it makes it easier for your mental health to be smooth. And not everyone could do that. I know that. I ain't got time to go to the gym and go swimming in the lake. I can't remember who it was that said about swimming in the lake, actually. Danny Postel and his cold showers. That was the one that really got me. Never going to happen. Andre, big Maori man that he was, said a trouble shared is a trouble halved. But Gribbo's top tip was about not being too hard on yourselves. Each of my guests has brought different stuff. I loved Kane Brown and his be selfish, look after yourself. Marcus Birdman, who had a stroke, talked about the need, again, for yoga and that. My tips, if you can reframe unhelpful thoughts, it's always going to benefit you in the long run. Try and live in today. Don't worry about the past. Try not to dwell on the future. If you can connect with others, like Geoff was saying, have friendships, have relationships, support people, live a healthy life where you can. I would say you can learn from positive people if you have them around you. If you can get positive people around you, do. Look, not everyone can. So if you're struggling and you can't find that energy to dig yourself out of that hole, or you can't ask for help, then be the person that spots that in someone else and offer them the hand of friendship. Life is a battle. We don't have to do it on our own. We don't have to march on our own. It's easier if you've got people there to support you. Ultimately, I guess we are on our own. We have to kind of get through it by ourselves. As always, I want to thank you for listening. Do listen in again, or tell your friends on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all those other mediums that we have. Big thanks to Natasha Donovan, who's been in the booth tonight talking to people, but also to the WJ group who have supported me throughout this. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Well, that's the end of another episode of Reading the Signs with me, Comedy John Ryan. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. talking with comedians about mental wellness, mental well-being, and just trying to get the conversation going. What we're trying to do is show that it's good to talk, and we're also trying to show that everybody can go through the same experiences. A massive thank you to the WJ Group who sponsored the show, showing their commitment not just to mental well-being, but also to reaching as broad an audience as possible. It's great to be part of the mensradiostation.com family, so do check us out on the website, on social media. We'll be back next Monday. You take care. Stay safe, everybody.